What's going on, people? We're back with the UK's cheapest John Cooper works, and as you would have seen in the last video, we managed to get this engine out. Yep, we've no idea. Me and Luke spent a Saturday afternoon ripping that engine out, and if you don't already know why we were getting this engine out, let me show you. Ah shit. But as you may know, it's not just going to be a straight out, straight back in. In the last video, we started taking things off my old engine and putting them on the new one. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing in today's video. Start with the ancillaries, wiring harness, then lastly, we've got the gearbox to change over. Never done that, but less of me talking and more of me working. So as we move our way around the engine, after taking off the turbo last week, we're going to crack on with the wiring harness, and we're basically going to work our way around the engine to the front. Intake manifold's got to come off, as we've got to replace it on that one, and that will lead us into removing the rest of the harness and ancillaries. So let's get straight into it. So to start me off, I unplugged something to do with the cams, not quite sure what they are, moved round to the intake manifold, disconnecting all the vac lines, all the plugs, throttle body, and then I could finally unbolt the manifold. With the manifold out of the way, I then moved on to this auxiliary water pump, and then I had to lift the engine up a bit just so I could get the main battery to starter motor cable out. With the engine back down on the tyre, I could then get the aux belt off along with the aircon compressor. As you can see here, it was a bit tough to get out. And with that out of the way, I could start unplugging all the sensors. Let me tell you, there's a lot of them, along with 2 bolts, and it all comes out together. Ladies and gentlemen, on the floor here is a mini John Cooper Works engine wiring harness. Yeah, it's just a spider. Let me show you. So this is it laid out on the floor. This is the top side of the engine. Then these are some of the ECU plugs. Oh shit, don't want to stand on anything. Then it runs round to the engine. And we've got this, which runs to all like sensors and ancillary parts, spiders all the way down. All of that has had to be unplugged. Oh, this is going to be a daunting task, making sure I've got everything plugged in. I've took as many photos as I can, but yeah, another milestone. The problem is, I've got to do that twice because we've got another engine to strip down, so I won't film that because obviously you've just seen me do it, but here we go again. And like that, the second engine harness for tonight is off. It's crazy how much quicker things happen when you know what you're looking for. But yeah, what an absolute spaghetti junction. But this harness is absolutely pointless because it's been cut out off of it. So yeah, that is job done for tonight. I think we'll come back tomorrow morning, start swapping the ancillaries, and yeah, start rebuilding that side of the engine. So we're back the next day, and yeah, not off to a great start. So I had a quick look down into the intake, and I think I mentioned before, the intake manifold was broken, like slightly snapped off. We were hoping it was just a clean snap from the damage and nothing went in. But as I looked down with my torch, I saw a small shard of plastic sitting on one of the valves. And I tried to hoover it out, couldn't suck it out. So I got this flexi grabber thing. Anyway, it was so hard to get onto. kind of got hold of it and then it just slipped and it's dropped down into the cylinder. So the cylinder head's got to come off, but I know it's the right thing to do, to check all the cylinders for debris. I don't know how to do this, but I guess we're gonna have to find out. Let me show you what would happen if I don't get this plastic out and it got caught between a valve. Okay, it might not be that extreme, but you get my point. But for the time being, to stop me worrying about this piece of plastic, I turn my attention to the water pump housing, as on the new engine it's cracked, so we're going to swap it from the old engine. And it really is that simple. It's just a few bolts, clean up the surface, and it's straight back on. So you've just seen, I've just swapped over this water pump housing, and we've had an idea of potentially getting an endoscope down these holes, cylinder head holes, and seeing, you know, what's in there. Because if it's only this one cylinder, it might be worth trying to fish it out from the top. And yeah, but we'll see where we go from here. We'll see. So about an hour and a half's gone by. I've been picking people's brains and getting a hand with the process of getting this head off. Let me show you where we've got to. So this is where we're at. The rocker cover's loose. High pressure fuel pump is off, but I tried to get the rocker cover off with the injectors in, but you can see the plastic just hits the collars of the injectors, and you do need a puller to get them off, and I don't have one, so that's sort of spanner in the works. So I think the wise thing to do before we go through the hassle of getting the head off is get a camera down. We know there's something in this cylinder. If we can get a camera down the other bores, we can see what the next step is, if the head's got to come off, or if we can just fish something out of this one. So that's where we're at. I think that unfortunately brings an end to my day of working on the engine, but it's not all bad news, because step by step we're getting closer to getting this back in and running. It's literally now, obviously we've got the plastic issue, chuck the harness on, we've changed this over, we're getting really close now. So yeah, small steps, but it all comes together. Right, it's a Monday night after work, but first things first, before we get inspecting anything, let's get the engine off the table and hopefully onto this engine stand. So after about 45 minutes of faffing around, the bolts I've got for the engine stand, again, just don't do the job. It just doesn't work. So I'm gonna have to go back to the drawing board about that. But for now, we'll get the engine on the floor and we'll inspect the cylinders. One by one, I took each spark plug out, ready for the endoscope to go down. And here it is, the piece of plastic that's dropped into the cylinder. Just look at the size of it, man. I did drop the camera down each of the other cylinders, and you'll be glad to know they're clean as a whistle. What a great little tool this is. I can't believe I never got one before. There's been so many times I've thought, oh, endoscope would be class right now. But good news is that it's only that cylinder that we saw with a bit of debris in. The rest look absolutely mint, really healthy pistons. So yeah, now we've got the challenge of getting it out. How can we do this without taking the head off? Can we get it back through the intake? It's going to be a big job. So we called in Jake for this job, and let me run you through the method of madness that we had. So we knew that this piece of plastic was way too big to come out on its own. The only way we were going to get it out is to break it down into smaller pieces and try and extract it that way. But with the spark plug holes only being so big, we couldn't really get the camera and anything else down. So I'll let you use your imagination on how we got the injector out. But with the injector out, that gave us access for the camera and this specially made tool that we made for the job. So with this very, very special BMW tool, we lined it up on top of a piece of plastic using the camera and this rod, and we just hit it with a hammer, breaking the plastic up down into smaller pieces. And now we had smaller pieces, meant we could try and extract it from the bore.
Hold on, straight. It's just this spreading the bottom. No! Yeah, that's brilliant.
We're back and it's the weekend, and today's mission is, you would have seen the last clip, that's our method now of how we're getting this plastic out. So it's probably going to take me a few hours, but yeah, that's today's mission. So less of me waffling, I might as well get straight to it. So I went back to the classic way of just moving the plastic around the cylinder and then continuing to break it up. And then we had the idea of blowing compressed air down the inlet valves and having the hoover on top of the spark plug hole, hoping to suck some of the debris out.
Ready?
Yeah.
Steady. No.
So we've got one bit there, that's small enough to come out.
It's not though, is it? This bit.
That bit.
And a couple of little bits. One of it. Ready? Go.
After hoovering for ages and getting most of the plastic out, we were left with a few small shards, so the best thing to do was a bit of 3M tape on the end of a rod just to grab it out.
Yes! Okay.
More plastic!
So,
Finally, we've got the plastic out of the engine. God, that took forever, but we got it done. So now we can continue rebuilding this engine. I've already started by whacking the injector back in, got all the fuel rail to put back on, and then we can take the next steps. Finally, I could start putting back together this engine. So I started off with refitting the fuel rail, along with all the collars for the injectors, and then the fuel line to the rail. Now that all the fuel rail, all that's back together, we're going to move on to the next thing. Before we move on to the harness, I wanted to swap the sump from my old engine onto this one. Obviously we'll clean it out, but this engine, it was sat on the floor when the last owner was selling it. It's damaged the bottom of it, so I'd rather have a nice fresh sump. So the sump's off the old engine, but Jesus Christ, I forgot how bad this was. This needs a deep, deep clean. So to clean this out properly, I'm going to remove the level sensor, just so we can clean it out. We know we've done a good job. Like that, out it comes. We can give it a proper good clean because there'll be a bit of debris on the sensor. And just like that, a nice clean oil level sensor, along with an absolutely stunning sump pan. You'd never know. So with the sump all nice and clean, I can move on to removing the other sump off the other engine. And now that is what you usually want to find in your sump. Just lovely oil, no metal or anything. But it's time to clean the underside of here, get some sealant on, bolt the new one up, and that is job done for today. I made a start of cleaning the mating face of the engine and then moved over to the sump to clean that. And once it was all clean, I could lay my sealant. But yeah, it's not the prettiest job, but it will get the job done. And it was finally time to get that sump back on. And there we go, that's where I'm leaving today's work. That sump is now all bolted on. We're going to let it set overnight, come back tomorrow, fit the harness, and we can carry on probably through to the gearbox, all that stuff. So we're getting there. I'm so glad we got that plastic out. It took a while, but breaking it up into pieces like this, God, it took for ages, but it's done. We're making progress. So I'll see you tomorrow. Right, so next thing we've got is the engine loom. Lovely spider web of an engine loom. I'm going to get it on. Hopefully I can remember where everything goes, but should be self-explanatory, but we'll see. Before I started ripping on the harness, tried putting the alternator on, and yeah, let's just say that took longer than it should have. But once that was on, I could find the main power cable that goes from the battery to the alternator to the starter motor. With the main power harness out of the way, I could move on to the bulk of the harness, working from the top, plugging in all the sensors and remembering to add the auxiliary water pump as I work my way down. After routing some cables behind the aircon compressor bracket, it was time to actually fit it up, and just like the alternator, it needed a bit of persuasion. With the bottom half of the engine now done, we could move on to fitting the intake manifold and all the wires and sensors that go on top of that. I could then move round to the other side of the engine, plugging in all the other sensors, high pressure fuel pump, and clipping up the plugs for the O2 sensors. And last but not least, the small harness that goes to all the coil packs and the injectors. And that is pretty much one complete engine harness. And that rounds us out nicely for today's episode. We finally got this engine loom back on and it's starting to look like a complete engine. So in the next episode, we're going to be getting the gearbox on, getting the downpipe on, and we are ready to get it back in the car and get cranking. But I did want to add on in the end of this video, not sure what date it's going to be going up, but on the 16th of November, I'm getting in the boxing ring for charity, cancer research, for a boxing match. So that's why I've been a bit slow on the uploads, because I've been training in the background. So if you can, please use the link in the description to go and help out. We've already smashed the target, so if we can get some more donations, we all know someone who's been affected by cancer. So every penny is appreciated. So thanks for watching, and if you haven't subscribed already, please drop us a subscribe, drop us a like rating, and I'll catch you in the next one.